Good morning and welcome to this fifth in a series of webinars delivered by Visit Scotland in conjunction with Business Gateway's Digital Boost programme and part of a recovery package of webinars aimed at supporting tourism businesses as they look to reopen when feasible. My name's Andrew Craig from Visit Scotland and I'm joined today by Graham Kerr. Hello Graham from Targeting Innovation. And just as we begin today, hi there. I'd like to remind you all that you're all attendees today are in listen only and viewing only mode. So that means your microphone and your webcam is switched off. However, you are able to ask queries during Graham's session today. And if you have any queries about your own website or making improvements to your online presence, then please ask them via the questions tab in the GoToWebinar control panel. And we'll spend 10 to 15 minutes at the end discussing those questions. A question that's often asked is about whether we will be sharing the presentation or not. And the answer to that is yes. We will be distributing a link to a PDF version of this presentation at the end of either at the end of the webinar or at some point over the next couple of days. And we'll also be asking for your feedback via a link that we'll share at the end of the presentation, and I'll also put it out via the GoToWebinar messaging function as well. So this, to begin, just a few bits of background information to begin with. This is a screenshot of the Digital Boost homepage. Just a quick reminder that the Digital Boost programme delivers free services, including up to 21 hours of one-to-one specialist digital support. That's obviously subject to your application being authorised by a Business Gateway advisor. You can apply by calling your local Business Gateway office, and the contacts are also are on the website. At the moment, workshops are all webinars, and you can book your place online on the website, which is www.bgateway.com/digitalboost. And there are also online guides on 21 digital topics and video tutorials on 9 digital topics. So I think that's enough from me just now. I'll pass things over to Graham Kerr, who's going to lead today's session. He's here representing Targeting Innovation, who were selected to deliver these sessions after a due procurement process. And these sessions, there's going to be another 5 over the next few weeks, and more information will be displayed at the end of the presentation. They'll be led by a variety of experts in the field of digital. So without further ado, Graham, I'm going to pass things over to you.
Okay, thanks, Andrew.
And I'll just
Okay, hopefully everyone can see my screen okay. So morning everyone. As Andrew says, I'll be covering this topic today. And the agenda today, we're going to go through sort of 3 main sections. The main focus of it is in section 2, which is kind of improving your tourism website. But we kind of wanted to provide a bit of context just around the the industry trends, and we also want to highlight some sort of SEO elements which kind of relate to the other kind of areas that we're going to talk about today. So the first part is just looking at some industry trends. One thing to kind of consider is we need to just focus on a customer-focused approach. customers don't always act on every inspiration. So every piece of content that you publish or you put out, not every customer will interact with them. More and more, it needs to talk to them as individuals. It needs to fulfill their needs. And it often sort of varies by trip. So that, a customer's need for a family trip might be different from a trip with friends, for example. So it just needs to be very sort of customer focused. And the statistics on the right are from a Think with Google study, which kind of found that 47% of people decided not to book because of unmet needs, whereas only 26 decided not to book because of price. So I think there's price is obviously very important, but more and more it's about fulfilling people's needs and what they actually want. And a lot of that is publishing content, making sure your business gives them what they're looking for. So yeah, it's often not just a price decision, and that's why it's very difficult to master, especially for travel businesses where people's needs might change depending on the type of trip they're wanting to take. There are, however, ways of giving yourself a good chance of meeting those needs, and that's kind of what we're hoping to achieve by this presentation, just giving you some tips for that. So the first area we're going to look at is your tourism website user experience. So for anyone that's not kind of used to what that term is, this is just a definition. So the overall experience of a person using a product such as a website or computer application, especially in terms of how easy or pleasing it is to use. So I mean, this is very prevalent when you look at a website. The experience you give to the customer needs to try as best as you can to reflect what it's like to deal with the business. And a lot of that is answering questions. It's really talking to that customer. So one thing we're keen to do in the presentation is just to ask you some questions. So we've got a poll just now, which I believe is available to complete. So we're kind of asking the question at this point, how many of you currently analyze and track the user experience on your website? So for example, do you look at Google Analytics regularly? Do you use any user experience software, or do you just do you put yourself in the customer's shoes regularly just to make sure you're kind of meeting their needs? So
just collecting the responses on that now, Graham. So just
right.
We give people a few more seconds. And there we go.
Okay, great. So it kind of looks like there's sort of 62% said no. So that, I mean, that's useful for us to know, as we go through this presentation. Then hopefully we'll kind of highlight why that should be a focus. So that kind of leads quite nicely, I guess, into why would you consider it as important? One of the key things is customer loyalty. So if your visitors get a poor experience on the website, they're not going to come back. Travel in particular is a considered purchase. Very few people buy from the first business that they research. So it's important to get a good impression, or you'll get sort of discounted at that research phase, which is obviously not what you want. The likelihood is then that the customer will go to a competitor, and in turn, you'll probably lose that piece of business, but you'll probably also lose any future referrals. And if your competitors are doing a good job, then they're probably likely to keep that customer. It's vital that you give the best opportunity to get that customer in the first place, but then retain them. So return on investment and conversions. So make your buyer's journey streamlined, make it very easy to deal with the business. And this can be, important when you're looking at content on the website, but also things like booking systems, ways to contact. And ultimately what you want to try and do is shorten the time from, somebody coming on the website to making a sale or an inquiry. And the ways to do that are to calculate what your website's conversion rate is and measure that against how your website performs, and we'll kind of give you some tips to how to do that. Efficiency as well. So if visitors can find what they're looking for quickly and easily, then there's no errors that they encounter, then they're kind of more likely to engage with the business, and they're more likely to give them the comfort to book or to inquire. And the faster you can convert them into customers, the more chance, obviously, that you're generating more revenue through that each day. And ultimately, what we all want to do is create customer satisfaction, and your website, particularly these days, has got a big impact on that. So that's all very well, but how would you go about improving your website? So one thing that customers will look for is credibility. So what you want to do is you want to add elements to your website that make your company, your business as credible as you can. So if you have certifications, memberships, you've appeared in local or national press, you've got reviews and testimonials. I mean that kind of above all is kind of one of the most important elements. People look for social proof. They want to know what a business is like, not just from the business itself, but from people who have interacted with the business. So I mean, it's important to think it's not going to be the same for every business. Whether you're a hotel or an attraction or a tour operator, for example, then your trigger points, your credibility elements will be different. So it's important to think about what about your business will create that credibility. What I want to do is just share some examples. So for example, this is a hotel. So they've kind of thought about the customer. They've thought about what things would convince them to want to stay with them. They've made it very clear. This is on their homepage, so it's kind of very prominent in the user journey. And then Wilderness Scotland, quite a good example. So they've got award-winning journeys as quite a prominent feature, and then they've got certifications, awards, sort of increase their profile through using these kind of very prominent logos. So and that's an important thing. People engage a lot more with imagery and graphics than they do text. So if you can highlight it in images, then even better. As I mentioned, one of the key things is reviews. So if you do have sort of various review platforms set up, if you can try and show them in one place and put them on the website, try and make it as easy as possible for customers to find that information. Don't make it difficult in that they need to click and then go away to another site, in which case you might lose them at that point. So if you've got Google reviews, Facebook, obviously TripAdvisor, booking.com, kind of any kind of touch point you've got with a customer. I mean, I think it's safe to say, customers are very savvy now. They're unwilling to solely trust what the business tells them. And it's interesting because on average, consumers read about 10 reviews before making a purchase. And 88% of customers trust user reviews as much as personal recommendations. So, and I mean, ultimately, I think what's relevant in the tourism industry is that on average, you need 40 online reviews before somebody believes a business star rating is accurate. So it's important to try and, wherever you can, encourage people to leave reviews, because the more reviews you have, the more credibility again. So again, just some examples. This is a business that offers sort of adventure activities. So they've highlighted the reviews. They've made it very easy for the reviews to be found. They've shown that they've got a TripAdvisor rating of 5. So again, they've just made it very, very kind of visually appealing and sort of very easy to understand. You also want to obviously make it very easy to book your products or services. I mean, the user experience could be perfect throughout the website, but if there's not a clear call to action for people to carry out, then they might not know what to do, and you're not going to convert people from a visit into a booking. So it's essential that they're visible. So generally it would be good if they're in bright colours. They're what's called above the fold. So what that means is basically when somebody lands on the website, they should see a call to action without having to scroll down the page. You just want to make it very easy for them to find. And kind of research shows that sort of best practice is you try and include it. Whether it's book, buy, schedule. Works best in the top right hand corner of a page. So what I've tried to do again is just to highlight some examples. So Crieff Hydro's booking facility is very prominent. It's in a kind of bright green colour top right. The Balmoral, again, for example, is the whole website is white, but the calls to action in red and again top right. Gleneagles again, they've used a highlight colour on their brand, which is green, and again it's top right. So wherever you can, that's where I would recommend you put a lot of these call to actions. And again, what you want to make sure is you're not just focused on where people land on the page. You want to make sure that they're going to be able to find it as they scroll down the page. So this example on the Gleneagles website, the navigation in this book now facility follows you down the page, and the journey also doesn't end at the button as well. So it's important you look at the journey. So once somebody clicks the book button, what happens? Is it a seamless journey after that point? And it's also, it's good to include information that helps users convert through the purchasing journey as well. So just to give you another example, this is another hotel site that makes it very prominent on every page. This booking facility at the bottom follows you all down the page. It's the same with the Crieff one. The book now button follows you down the page. And then this kind of proof points where you're going to book. They've highlighted why you would book direct very prominently. This is an example of the Love It. So obviously during the COVID sort of period, they're making it very obvious as to what the safeguards are around booking, which is vital. So. And this is just a task for you for after the webinar. This is a kind of a theory of how you identify what is important on your website and how you make sure it's prominent. So I would make a list of between 5 and 10 tasks initially. I mean, you can expand this out over time. I would start with 5 to 10. And you just think about what are the main things that a website user would want to do. So it could be they want to be able to book. They want to be able to see availability. They want information that's going to be relevant to them, for example. And then just try and figure that out for your business. What are these tasks, and then sort of put it into this loop. So if you have existing feedback from customers, does that meet these tasks? You can use sort of analytics programs to do it, but also you could just ask customers as well. So and I would recommend doing this quite regularly as well. So I wouldn't just do it as a one-off exercise. I would sort of look at it, I would say at least twice a year, just to see how, if this changes, because obviously businesses change and the way customers interact changes. So we've got another poll question just now, which was, when was the last time you put yourself in customers' shoes to review the content on your website? So do you look through the website regularly? So if you could vote on that just now, that'd be great. Okay, so that's encouraging. So 58% said in the last 3 months, 22 within 6 months. So kind of very few kind of voted that they don't regularly do it. So that's good. So the other thing you want to focus on is high quality content. So the content needs to build trust and authority with customers. It takes 50 milliseconds for a new website visitor to form an impression of the website. And what you want to try and do is make it as visual as you can. I mean, the brain processes images 60,000 times faster than text. So if you can get across very clearly and very quickly what the business is and does with imagery, then I would kind of focus on that. I mean, you do need text as well, especially from an SEO perspective. But if you can get that across quickly, then that's definitely a good way of doing it. And everything needs to be user focused as well. Where possible, use real customer images, user generated content. If people send you images of the great time they've had, or or you take images of customers when they're kind of doing your activities, for example, then I would definitely use that. I would shy away from using especially stock photography. What you want to try and do is get across to the customer exactly what they're going to experience. I mean, ultimately, kind of visual content tends to generate 7 times higher conversion rates as well. So again, it's kind of vitally important. And just to give you some examples, I mean, Wilderness Scotland make it very, very prominent with imagery. And then got this example as well, which kind of shows exactly what you're going to be doing as part of the activities, and it's real customers. Again, Crieff Hydro, you're showing real customers at the resort. And then the content you include should be customer focused as well. So it should, answer customers' questions. So what's included in your stay, for example. You want to add value, so you want to showcase the value the customer's going to have. I wouldn't put it in terminology about, we offer this, we offer that. It's more about putting it in the customer's terms. And it's all about creating empathy between the business and a customer's needs. So you kind of want to make it obvious that you're trying to fulfill their needs. And I think it's something that's very easy to get stuck on is you're using industry jargon as well. So I would just kind of sense check that on content you've already got, just to see are you using things that maybe a customer wouldn't understand. So again, some examples. So this website, the terminology is what's included in your stay. They've got content related to that. This hotel and resort has a lot of information that's about the local area. So again, that's adding value to the customer. And what you're also doing with that is you're ensuring that people don't go away from the website to find that information. So if you can house that information on your website, then you're kind of keeping the customers part of your journey. And again, it's just another example. This is a hotel website. They're explaining about the culture, the local cycling, fishing. So you're kind of you're almost giving customers an idea of what they could do when they stay there, but you're also you're answering their queries. So. And again, Crieff Hydro have said, what are you looking for? It'd be very easy, for them to say, we have hotel rooms, we have self-catering, we have activities, but it's just terminology that puts it in the mind of the customer. And the other part is just to consider the flow of the content as well. So what you want to try and do is to make sure that the flow from the top to the bottom of the page makes sense. So, for example, Wilderness Scotland, they start with a review, a quote. If somebody wants to book at that point, then they can book. When you scroll further down the page, you can then see and sort of information about the business. You can then sort of the more specific information about the different activities and tours they offer. And if the steps aren't laid out clearly and in a logical flow, then I would look to rearrange it. If you kind of look at it from a customer's viewpoint, you kind of go, well, I would have probably wanted to know that information at this point. Then I would kind of look to improve that. So I would kind of walk through each page, just make it very clear as to where you want the customer to go. So in this Wilderness Scotland example, they kind of want to route them into the booking system, to find, the activities they're going to want to see, and also what they should do, and provide them with the need to know information, in a logical way. No Limits is another one that does this quite well. So they've, the first thing you see on their website is, your adventure starts here. So it's very customer focused. They then want you to route into, checking availability or booking. But then kind of as you scroll down the page, then you've got, let's get started, which then goes into, images of customers enjoying the activities. So. And what you also want to do is provide a consistent user experience as well. So it's not just about the desktop on a website. I think a lot of people get into that trap and don't realise that especially now, mobile is very important. You want to make sure that you make sure it's the same experience on mobile. Also, when people visit your social media, you want your Facebook page, your Instagram presence to be consistent. So it's consistent messaging, consistent images, and a consistent overall experience. And the way you can do this and the way you can track, how effective it's been is just by looking at the data. And we've got another kind of webinar this month on analytics, which I'm hosting as well. And this will give you a much deeper insight into what you can do with the analytics side of things. But I would recommend you kind of spend at least half an hour a month, just looking at the data to see have things improved, have things get worse, and if you do make changes, then I would track them to see has that made a difference. So you kind of want to look at some of the stats around, bounce rate, which is essentially, does somebody land on a page and leave straight away? Click-through rates are, how people then click through to the website, whether it's from marketing or it could be between pages on the website. And then ultimately conversion rates, so how many people go on the website and convert to inquire or to book. So. And to do this, you can utilize some tools. So it's kind of very easy to be blinded when you're in the business. You're looking at it every day. It can be very, very useful to get an external viewpoint, and also do things in small chunks. It's very easy to make wholesale changes, but if you make one at a time, then you can really track to see whether that's made a difference. I've included an article here just on step-by-step guide you can use for that, and also these tools are quite useful as well, just to carry this out. And I thought I'd just provide some examples of what these tools do. So this is using a system called Crazy Egg, and it's basically a heat map. So it shows you on the page, where people click. So in this example, people click most on the search bar, and then some of the navigation items along the top. This one is a report that shows how many people scroll down the page. So it goes from red to blue. So red being the bit that people see most, to blue, which they see the least. So you'll kind of generally see it moving from red to blue as you go down the page, but it's quite important then that when you look at that on your own website, that all the key information, all the booking, the calls to action to book, etc., are within these kind of red-yellow zones, so that it's very easy. And then just, this just gives you another idea of how people click on the website. So where do they click on the page? I'm going to play a very short video. Just let me know if you can't hear it, but hopefully you can. It's just an example of another type of testing you can do, which is video testing. It's using a system called Userlytics. And it's just an example of somebody user testing the Airbnb website. So just an example that, there's a perception all these big businesses get it 100% correct, but I think you'll see from a couple of minutes of this video, it'll maybe show you it's not the case.
Let's put that first. And I'm looking for 50 to 250 per night, near or in. Cheapest lodging of all. Okay, let's hide this for a second. I want to filter on price. So in San Francisco, and I need to either filter or sort on price. Can I not sort on price? Is that not an option? So I have dates and guests here. That's not helpful. It didn't say house or apartment or anything, so I don't see anywhere to sort at all by price. Language and currency, I mean, that's not going to help. I need USD. So is there okay, I'm back in the search bar. Price between 50. Is it going to know that I'm trying to add a filter? No.
Okay, so I'll stop it there, but I think it just gives you an idea of, this is the kind of feedback you can get, and it's not always the case that the kind of big companies get it 100% right. So, and then the final one is just you can track things like how many people fill out certain parts of forms, and also how what information do they fill out as part of a booking process, and you can track where people drop off at this point again, so you can make some improvements. So, so we've got another poll at this point. Just how have you used UX tools before in your business? So if you've used any of the tools that we've kind of mentioned, I'll give you a minute or so to answer. Okay, so 85% haven't. So it's definitely something I would look at. They are very easy to use, and most of them are very easy to install as well. So I would definitely look into them. I mean, obviously we've included them in the presentation, so you can maybe go and have a look at them at a later date. But so at this point, we'll just have a slight pause and just kind of, we're quite keen on people to ask questions. We'll answer them at the end, but just at this kind of point before we go into the SEO side, just kind of wanted to highlight we're keen for you to do that. So I'll move into, so we do have another 2 sessions on the 24th and the 30th of March, which go into SEO in more detail. So I'm just going to run through this relatively quickly, just to cover off and sort of show what the correlation is with the user experience side of things for SEO, because especially content these days is vitally important. So I mean, tourists sort of make decisions based on search and the experience of others on the internet. It's essentially you kind of consider SEO as being a very important element. 2 out of 3 leisure travelers turn to search engines to collect information. As I said before, travel in particular is it's a considered purchase, so you kind of need to make sure you're covering all the bases. And I think this quote from Lily Ray, I think is quite prevalent. So you should start by putting yourself in users' shoes and by asking yourself, is the content truly valuable, and is the brand trustworthy, and is the website easy to use, especially on mobile. And just to kind of highlight the mobile element, Google started to rank websites based on their mobile experience first. It used to always be that they would rank it based on your desktop, but now it's completely mobile focused. So it's vital that you do have, mobile optimized website. And then just some sort of travel related statistics behind that. 33% of all French travellers book using a mobile device. It's relatively high in other areas like the US, the UK. So, I mean, a lot of people research on their mobile and then move to desktop to purchase. But I mean, if you're ignoring, 25%, 30% of travellers who book on a mobile, then obviously that can have a big impact. And then this is a useful tool that just helps you to test, how easy your mobile is to use. So as I mentioned, you need to focus on user-focused content. Google in particular is very good now at reading content to see if it serves users' needs. And if anything, Google over time is going to be better at identifying that. And they kind of introduced something called EAT recently, and basically stands for expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. And essentially that's what they want you to sort of display through your content. So I would definitely sort of bear that in mind when you're writing content, you're putting that content together. You're probably aware of keyword research and kind of how important that is to make sure that you're going to rank, your website's going to rank for the phrases and words that you want it to. I mean, especially during the current environment, we can't solely rely on this because some of the data has been skewed by the pandemic in particular. You can see the screenshot shows Untitled Scotland. You can see very, very low figures, but then a massive spike when we had the kind of restrictions ease, and it's kind of tailed off again. So you can't sort of solely rely on keyword research, especially at the moment. You can use these kind of various tools to research that, but I would also sort of use your own information. How people find your website, what content's important, about your business, and sort of related to that, how do you write that on the website itself? So Google looks at the website's page content to determine whether it's relevant, and this relevancy thing is vitally important. Google will use a variety of aspects to say, does this content meet the needs of the customer based on what they've searched? Is it answering their questions? A lot of searches now are query based, so it'll ask a question essentially, and if you're not answering that question within the content, then Google will kind of look at that relevancy and think it's not as relevant. So again, just some examples. The Tontine has a kind of huge amount of content which is aimed at answering customers' queries about these kind of various things. Again, it's just another example where they've written, this business has written a lot of content which answers queries for customers. Creef again have done quite a good job at top 10 things that we love. So it's giving guidance to the customer. And again, this was highlighted earlier on. Just local information, local events, local news. So I would focus on that when you look at content. Are you really sort of answering the customer's queries? Are you answering the kind of questions that are likely to ask? And then the next bit I just wanted to go through was local SEO and Google My Business. So you may or may not have a Google My Business account. If you don't, I would recommend you create one. If you do, then it's probably likely that you can improve it because Google introduces new features sort of quite regularly. And again, if your competitors are doing a good job with this, then somebody's more likely to find it and more likely to interact with it than if yours is poor. So most people perform locally targeted search when they're looking to go somewhere. So they might search, Hotel Glasgow, tour operator, Highlands, for example. So you want to make sure you're sort of appearing, and this screenshot just shows where in the results these local searches appear. So you can see that they actually appear above all of the sort of natural search results. So they've got a huge prominence. So if you don't have a presence there, then it's, you know, there's a huge, you're missing a sort of huge opportunity. You also feature on Google Maps. So again, people search by using Google Maps quite a lot. And if you don't have a Google My Business account, then you won't show on the maps. You can easily sign up if you don't have a Google My Business page on this link. And there's also a very useful resource on the Visit Scotland website just about Google My Business for the industry. And just to put this in context, there's a few statistics around this to say, you know, hotels generally have the sort of highest number of views on maps and searches every month. And food and beverage as well has a high percentage of people searching on mobile, and quite often, especially because, you know, Google will use your location, then the kind of prominence of Google My Business in the maps is pretty important. So in summary, sort of kind of what we've aimed to cover in this webinar is, you know, just the need to make bookings more valuable than price-based. So basically, you just want to make sure you're answering the customer's questions. You know, price is obviously still vitally important, but if you don't get the needs of the customer right, then they're probably not likely to buy. Just making sure everything's customer focused, you know, when it comes to the experience of the customer and from an SEO perspective, because Google's very good at tracking that. Just, you know, wherever you can track what the experience is like and improve it. You know, but use this by, you know, looking at the analytics. And as I said, you know, we've got another presentation which at this month, which will go through that in a bit more detail. And then just, you know, that top tasks sort of assignment I kind of gave. I think it's definitely a good way to make it focus on your business. You know, focus on top things you want them to do. And then build the sort of user experience around that. And then I mean, the SEO side of things again is vital. You know, it's how people will find the business. And, you know, as I said, we've got another 2 webinars this month which cover that in a lot more detail. So that kind of concludes the presentation. We've got some time now for some questions.
Thank you very much, Graham. That was excellent and food for thought, I think, for everyone on the call today. We have got quite a few questions have come in. I'll just you mentioned a few of the webcams that we've webinars, sorry, that we've got coming up over the next couple of weeks, and I'll just make sure that you can see the details about those. There we are. So that gives you information. Graham, you mentioned the analytics one. That's on the 17th from 2 till 3:30, and that's you that's taking that one, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, grand. So that's 2 till 3:30. You can book all of these webinars on www.bgateway.com/events. You can go on and make a reservation. They're all free of charge, and you can go on and make the reservation there. So to come to a few questions now, Graham, I've got a few questions for you, and I'll just bring up the details. Somebody asked, actually, I'll answer this question. Somebody asked a question about, I think one of the stats you mentioned, Graham, was that 26% of visitors to sites look elsewhere due to price. How often is this due to too low a price? Well, in response to that, we don't have specific statistics on that, but it's it's highly likely, I would say, that visitors will look elsewhere if the price is too high for them. I think that's safe to say. And then for some visitors will associate if your price is way lower than your competitors, for example, some visitors might associate cheapness with poor quality. So it's something to be aware of. Whenever you're setting pricing, I think we hear this often, but take a look at what your competitors are doing, see the pricing that they are charging, and perhaps even ask or poll a few of your visitors when they arrive as to what their impressions were of the price, if they thought it was a fair price, if they thought it was too high or too low. So that's some of my own personal thoughts on the pricing question. Graham, somebody asked, what is an example of a UX analytics program excluding Google Analytics? Can you give any examples there?
It depends what website or what website platform you're using. If you're using something like Squarespace or Wix, you also get analytics programs built into these platforms as well. I mean, Google Analytics by far is probably the most used. So I'd kind of advise clients that, you know, even if you do have that built into an existing platform, that you do use analytics as well. You know, just because it gives you a huge amount of additional data that a lot of these other platforms don't. And just purely because it's a Google product, it also integrates with all the Google suite of additional products. If you're running Google advertising, you're sort of doing various other things with Google products, then all that data feeds through. So I would definitely consider Google Analytics as probably being the best one, I think.
Yeah. And then another one, perhaps a bit of a mix between UX and site design. Do you think the menu on your website should be at the top of your website, or should it go down the side as in a sidebar kind of design? Does that make a difference? I think perhaps the person is thinking about it from the perspective of a mobile-friendly website, a responsive website.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's been a big shift to. There was a time a few years ago where a lot of web design moved to the navigation being down the left, but it's going to move back now with the responsive nature of websites to being at the top. You know, it's a lot easier to make a website responsive if the navigation's at the top. And quite often what people will use are what are called mega menus. So you'll hover over it and it will drop down, and you can look at various, or you can access various pages from there. I mean, when it comes to mobile, you know, as you'll see on virtually every website, you know, they'll use what are called hamburger menus. So it's like three lines, which I think most users now know that's how you access the navigation on a mobile.
Someone else has asked if you need to ask customers for their permission to put feedback on your website. I think the simple answer to that is that it's always appropriate to ask their permission, especially if you're going to put any customer names or where they're from on your website. It's polite, it's appropriate to make sure you ask them if it's okay to do that, and we would always encourage you to do so.
I think I would probably do that with images as well. You know, even if people have provided the images, then just make sure you tell them where you're going to use them as well. So.
Yeah. And then Graham, somebody's asked, a business has asked, how do I actually make my website, mobile optimized? How can I do that? How would I go about doing that?
It's not really something that can be done retrospectively. It kind of needs to be developed in that way from the start. So yeah, you used to be able to have a separate mobile site, but now sort of Google they don't penalise you, but it's a bad sign to Google if you have a separate mobile site now rather than one that is responsive and works across all devices. So I would, yeah, if it's not mobile optimized just now, I think probably the bad news is you probably need to restart and sort of get a new site from scratch. So.
Yep. Is another question, how often should we run tests on user experience on our website? So I think we had a poll on that, kind of on that, how often people check the website, but how often would you say that people should actually run those tests on their own website?
I mean, I think it's very, very dependent on the business, I think. I mean, I would probably try and do it at least twice a year, just to see, kind of how the kind of the statistics change over time. I think you would probably want to do it more often if you were doing a lot of the, you're being very proactive with these tools. Maybe you're identifying issues and you're making changes. I would probably review it a lot more frequently. I mean, I used to be a digital director for a large business, and we used to do it constantly. So we would do user tests, we would make changes, and then we would track it every week. So yeah, it can range between I would say at least a couple of times a year. But if you're being very proactive, I would do it quite regularly.
Okay. And then someone asked on that sort of note, someone asked about the cost implications of all of this. Now, there are you've mentioned a few of them. There are a variety of free tools that businesses can use. That's right, isn't it? But I suppose if a business wants to delve a bit deeper and get an agency into it, then there will be costs associated with that.
Yeah. So I mean, obviously Google Analytics is free. Some of the tools that I mentioned, so Hotjar and some of these other tools do have free versions. There are limitations on it though, but again, it might be worth trying the free versions first to see what benefit you get from it. Quite a lot of these, or all of these tools are based on a monthly subscription, so you can maybe try it for a few months, pay for it, and then you'll see what value it's given. But yeah, I mean, as Andrew said, I mean, if you do get an agency involved, yeah, I mean, it can be relatively costly because most of them will charge, certainly sort of daily rates to do what sort of one-off analysis, but it might be a retainer if you want to be really proactive with it. So.
And then someone's asked a question about repairs on websites where the booking page no longer works efficiently. If the booking page is no longer working efficiently, that should be your booking system provider, who would be able to look at, who should give you at least some answers and some possible causes to why that's happening. They should at least be able to help you with that. Your web designer as well would be able to look into it. Perhaps there's a broken link, or it might be if it's a booking system, check simple things like, have you updated your pricing recently? Is your pricing out of date? Is your pricing for last year, for example? The number of businesses, tourism businesses across Scotland that we see that haven't yet updated the pricing for 2021 and have got pricing for not even 2020 but 2019 or 2018 is quite significant. So make sure your pricing is up to date, make sure your availability is up to date, and then of course check with your booking system too. Somebody asked a question, Graham, I wonder if you can respond to this. Is it a single page website appropriate for some tourism businesses, or is there value in perhaps having a few more pages on your website? Is there a specific number of pages, web pages that a website should have?
I think the challenge with a one-page website is you're probably very unlikely to rank in Google for a lot of things people will search for to find a business. So the way it works is you need decent amounts of content and a decent number of pages to be able to focus on the kind of keywords and the searches that people will search for. It wouldn't really work with a one-page website because you wouldn't be able to convey that or get across enough information within it. A one-page website really only works if it's a place for people to land on. So if you're doing a lot of marketing, you're doing a lot of kind of external promotion. But if you're relying on being found in Google, then yeah, a one-page website probably isn't gonna cut it, unfortunately. I mean, there's no real rule as to how many pages you have, but generally the more you can have and the more unique it is, and the more valuable content, the better you'll do.
Brilliant. Okay, I think that's all. I see we're now approaching noon, so that's all we've got time for today. I think we've answered most of the questions that have been posed today. Thank you all for your questions, all excellent questions. Graham, thanks very much for your presentation and your time today, very useful. And we'll see you again on the 17th for the analytics side of things. One final thing I should say is that as well as those 5 upcoming webinars, we would also be grateful if you could give your feedback, and we'll send out an email over the next couple of days as well with this link as well. But it's businessgatewayfeedback.com, and the pin is F53D. So we'd be most grateful for your feedback on today's session. But I think that just about wraps things all up. Thanks very much for joining us, and we'll look forward. Hopefully all of you can join us again on Monday. Remember, it's bgateway.com/events for registering for any of the forthcoming 5 events. But in the meantime, have a great rest of the day. Take care, everyone, and bye-bye.